Looks good on Facebook.
Awesome.
And now let me check YouTube. Oh, looks green on YouTube.
You know what I want to do? I want to share it on Facebook.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's on my Tim Black fan page. Not my personal, but my fan page. It's on Twitter, but Twitter's got the Periscope version. Like, it's on Facebook right now. If you go to my fan, Real Tim Black is, Colin, you know my stuff.
Let me see. I got your regular page. So I want to do Real Tim Black.
There you go. Yeah. And while you're doing that, I'll be checking to make sure people can hear me and see who's in the chat room, because we got people that come through for the chat. Stephanie. Stephanie is moderating my chat room tonight. Thank you, Stephanie, for moderating the chat. I appreciate you.
Man. I see the Tim Black at Night show. That's not it?
It may be it. If you on Facebook, Real Tim Black, you're on the right place.
Real Tim Black. Tim Black was live. No. I don't know. It's not working.
Oh, man. That's bad, man, for Facebook.
Share it on. Can you share it on my page? Is that possible?
You know what? I have never.
Oh, okay.
You know what? Let me see something. Well, people are actually commenting on Facebook right now, Garland. Let's GB. I should be able to share this, man. So, guys, if you can hear Garland, let them know, please.
And you can share it to my page. If somebody's watching and it's Garland Nixon, my page is open for everybody. So if somebody wants to try to share it with me, that's good. But actually, no, you can't share it to my page. I'm working on it. I'm trying here, Tim.
No doubt. Let's see. I'm gonna tag you at Garland.
Oh, okay.
And that should pop up. I'm thinking. You're fortunate to have one of those names and no one else. I've never met another Garland Nixon.
Yeah, that's the easy thing about it. Look, when I checked for for Twitter at Garland Nixon, it's there. It's always there.
Yeah, that's why I had to put real in front of my name. That's not because I got a big ego. Somebody had my name. All right, look, guys. All right, guys, welcome to another edition of the Tim Black at Night Show, No Sellouts. I'm very happy to have with me tonight a journalist, a commentator who's a serious voice in the conversation. I've been privileged enough to join this show on Sputnik with Lee Stranahan. It's Fault Lines. My friend and yours, guys, Garland Nixon.
All right. Cheers. Great to be. It's a pleasure to be on the show, man. A pleasure. I'm really enjoying it. Love hanging out with you and my main man H.A. Goodman.
hey, look, I heard you had Jimmy Dore on your show recently.
Hey, Jimmy Dore was on fire. Look, I was on the dump button. I had to be on the dump button. Jimmy Dore, he got off, man. He got off.
He comes locked and loaded when he comes on shows, man.
Oh, yeah.
Did he just go rapid like a succession of truth bombs?
Oh, I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
There was once he got started, I wondered what it was going to be because, he was on my show. And sometimes when people get on another show, they'll be a little subdued. Not Jimmy.
Right.
Not Jimmy. He got on there, I'm like, Jimmy's an angry man tonight.
Yeah, man. I guess he figured he's talking to a new audience, man. Because Garland, man, you are more respectable. Garland, I don't know what it is, man. You just come across as a guy that, like, I would let you do my taxes. I would trust you, you know what I mean? Like, you just seem really respectable. Is that because you have so many years working for different news agencies?
Well, I don't know. I have a varied career. For a lot of people that don't know, I was in law enforcement for years, right? Which was funny because I was in law enforcement and here I am, a far left leaning. I didn't fit, trust me, I didn't fit in with the crew in law enforcement. But I was in law enforcement for years. And then, for a lot of people who don't know, I'm on the National Board of Directors for the American Civil Liberties Union. I've been doing radio for a while, so I'm a pretty mellow guy. But, the funny thing about me is, and this is what I always say, I'm a lot more radical than I come across. And if you listen to me long enough, you'll see I'm a radical. I have radical politics. And believe it or not, my mentor for years was Paul Robeson Jr., the son of Paul Robeson.
Wow.
I met him some years back in Washington, D.C., and got to talk with him, and we became friends, and he actually mentored me for several years.
Wow, man, that's damn impressive, Garland, man. Paul Robeson, man, wow, what a figure, what an icon, brother. I saw Hannity. Look, dude, get Hannity back right now for that bullshit he pulled on you. But was it Hannity or Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson, man, he pulled that crap on you, man. Trying to paint Mayor Marion Barry like he was the worst mayor that ever existed in America.
Well, you know, Tucker Carlson, if you go, you know, I was on his show last week, but if you watch what Tucker does, he'll have like two talking points. I don't know. He must go to Wikipedia or something and get a couple talking points. If you notice, if anybody goes to Fox News, goes to YouTube and just searches my name, Garland Nixon and Tucker Carlson, you'll see it. I was on there talking about Marion Barry, but he has like two talking points and he'll just repeat them over and over, you know, but that's pretty much all he has.
Right. I mean,
a lot of substance to Tucker Carlson. He's more show than anything else.
I mean, it's not like you defended drug use. You know what I mean? Like, who would do that? Of course. But drug use hurts the person doing it. It's not like he was a drug dealer.
Well, see,
you know what I mean?
The other thing to talk about, because we were talking about whether or not Marion Barry should have a statue. But the other part of it is this. If he's going to discuss Marion Barry's life, his background, whether or not he deserves a statue based on what he did, then we got to go to the Civil War, the Civil War heroes of theirs, these Southern heroes. If he wants to discuss whether they deserve a statue based on their life, guess what? I'm ready to discuss that. Because if you're going to tell me that a man who fought to enslave people, who took up arms against the United States, because that's what I said to him. I said, wait a minute, you're talking about a man who was the president of SNCC, of the Student and Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And you're going to say he shouldn't have a statue, but a man who took up arms against the United States is supposed to have a statue. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense, man. It doesn't. And I know Tucker said he met Marion Barry and that he's been over his house or he came over for dinner. I just can't imagine, like, does Tucker Carlson realize the reverence that people have for Marion Barry? It's not based on his skin tone, but it's based on, I remember, and I was in high school, Garland. I wished I lived in D.C. when I was in high school because those kids had summer jobs and we had to fend for self. Do you remember this?
Right, exactly. And see, so the things that that's a couple of things I brought up. One of the things important was that when Marion Barry was the first significant member of the civil rights movement who became an administrator of a major city. To get a major, the people who started off, who got big positions were him, and of course John Conyers, who was elected, who Martin Luther King actually was the only person that Martin Luther King went out and actively campaigned for. So he was a major figure. But when he came in to Washington D.C., a lot of people don't know this. So you had this major city, no black businessmen were getting contracts from the city. One of the first things he said was, "Look, this is ridiculous. 30% of the city contracts have to go to black contractors." He built the black middle class in Washington, D.C. And the big thing about Marion Barry was this. What do we see today? We see politicians greasing their own pockets. We see they walk in and they're middle class, and within 10 years, they're a millionaire. How do you do that in politics? How do you make $100 million when you're making $179,000 in politics? What do you have to offer? They're selling influence. They're influence peddlers. Marion Barry never made a dime. When Marion Barry died, he lived right over in Ward 8 with the people that he represented. Politicians, people, young, a lot of attorneys, black, white, etc., who made a lot of money because he helped them get on their feet, would stop by his house, drop him off things, give him a few dollars, give him food, because he never enriched himself through politics.
Man, Garland, that is such a strong point. I don't think that can be challenged. Give it up for that. Give it up for that, man. Look, and we know what happens with a lot of these politicians. The moment they get into office, Garland, 30% to 70% of their time is spent fundraising for the next election. And that's not what Marion Barry was about, obviously, or he would have put a lot of money away himself.
Right. And the other thing that we have today that makes our politics really not work, and that is that revolving door, because you don't even have to get elected anymore. You can get a job. You know, one of the things I found out through Donna Brazil's book was there's a woman, you know, you see these the Hillary Clinton surrogates that you see them on TV for all the last few years, and they're always, I love Hillary, everything's perfect. And one of them I saw many times was a woman named Hillary Rosen. And I just thought, well, she just loves Hillary. She's a big Hillary fan. But what we find out later is that Hillary Rosen, that one of the things we found out through Donna Brazil's book is, and that I think is significant, and that is that what Debbie Wasserman Schultz did for the last 5 years before the 2016 election was, she spent double what was normally spent on a monthly basis. Normally it cost the DNC about $2 million a month to exist. She was spending $4 million a month. But what she was doing was all of these consultants, etc., she was giving them money. Guess what? So I thought, well, Hillary Rosen, you know, I see her on TV. She loves Hillary Clinton, blah, blah, blah. She's just a Hillary fan. She was running a consultant firm that was getting $25,000 a month. $300,000 a year she was getting from the DNC. So what the DNC was doing was they were greasing upon all these people that you see all the time on TV, and you think, well, they just love the Democrats. They're just, no, they're not there because they're friendly with them. There's checks going out. And so she, and is it an accident? She runs the DNC, broke into the ground. And then they're going to argue, well, Hillary Clinton bailed us out because we were broke. Well, why were you broke? Because you were handing out all the money to your buddies who were then going on TV saying Hillary's the greatest thing in the world. It was all a big scam. It was all a big sham.
You know, I noticed that the narrative has switched from being about Donna Brazile, even about Russia, so much as they started punching at Obama. They were saying that they were broke because Obama just ran through party after party. I don't know, he was renting Humvees. I don't know what he was doing, but they made it seem like that was the issue. So you mean to tell me a majority, or at least a good portion of the money, actually just went to greasing palms to their friends, basically, who started companies?
Right. I remember when the first time I really heard, not the first time, but the first person in that circle that I heard mentioned, and that's when I knew he was done. And that was when Keith Ellison was running to be the chairman. And he said, we've got to do something about the consultant class that's just getting lots of money, and they're getting, and I'm like, oh, well, he ain't winning. You know what I mean? That's it for him. He's talking about cutting out the consultant class. At that point, when he started talking about the consultant class, they went and grabbed Tom Perez real quick, and they're like, hold on. This injustice will not stand. They cut him right out. And because I think Keith Ellison, for his shortcomings, he really was going to do some things different. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's the best guy, but he was going to do things different. And here's the evidence. They cut his throat. They kneecapped him to stop him from getting. If they weren't scared of him, if he was just one of them, he would have sailed right in. But when they realized, nah, I don't know about this brother. You know, got him. He's a little too close to Bernie, and he's talking about the consultant class. It's not going to happen.
Man, that's a good point, man. That's a litmus test, really. If the establishment rejects you, you must be all right.
Even if you're only going to do one thing different, rest assured you're going to do something different that they find unacceptable. And anything different than let's be honest with that. Anything different that they've been doing all along is unacceptable. Yeah. Because they're not willing to change anything. Zero, nothing.
Nothing. Status quo all the way, man. You know, Keith Ellison, you know, I had the opportunity to speak to him. I've DM'd him. We've DM'd back and forth, man, because I was concerned when he was running for the chair, Garland. I was looking at the smears that were coming his way, and it's like, I think he's reluctant to speak out about it, really. Like, he's still trying to operate within that ecosystem. You know what I'm saying? And I guess maybe coming out on, have you ever talked to him? Have you ever invited him on Pacifica, your show?
I've talked with him. I've met with him before in the past. You know, he had this great. So he had something that was called, if you look it up, that he put in for a while back, called the Robin Hood tax that he was pushing. And what that was, the Robin Hood tax was, if anybody out there look it up, Keith Ellison Robin Hood tax. What that was, and he was fighting for this a long time. He was advocating for a tax on Wall Street transactions, so that every trade made on Wall Street, it would be like a half a penny or something. But keep in mind something, they do electronic trades, the billions of trade. I think the Wall Street transaction tax would have brought in like $300 billion a year or something like that. And not only that, what it would have done was it would have made these people that are doing millions of transactions a day, they'd have had to think a little bit more about doing as many because they'd have had to pay. Keep in mind, there's a number of other countries that already do this. So it's not like they could argue it's going to shut it down, shut Wall Street down. So he pushed for that for a long time. So the guy has had a very good, everything hasn't been perfect, but he's had a far more progressive record than most people that you'll see in there. But they just couldn't allow what he was going to do. I'm not here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here shilling for him or anybody else. I mean, he's a guy. If you ask me, with what they did to him when they recently when they purged, he should have left. To me, I mean, they disgraced him. To me, in my opinion, I thought at that point, well, he's got to leave. The fact that he's sticking around just doesn't look well for him.
Right.
You're going to let somebody treat you like that, disrespect you. They just all but spit in his face, which tells you he has no power, and he's still sitting around there like he's going to be able to change that machine. It's not happening.
No, it's not going to happen, man. I don't believe it. Like, my faith is not there, man. But it seems like you have a closer relationship with some of the more progressive figures in the Democratic Party, man. And hell, man, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. Then, have you ever met Senator Elizabeth Warren?
I haven't met her. I tell you who I know pretty well. I was friends with, and that's what happened. I met Mr. Conyers, John Conyers.
Okay. I
was friends with him. Very, very, very progressive guy. Here's a guy who, got Martin Luther King's a birthday to be a holiday.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who every year, what he does? Every year, Mr. Conyers introduces a bill for reparations.
Yeah, he does. Right? Yeah, he does.
Who first introduced HR 676, which is Medicare for all. He's been doing that for 8-9 years. So here's a progressive guy. He's HR 1000, Jobs for All bill. Medicare for all. He's been putting in a bill for years. Jobs for all that says when that basically the term structural unemployment, it would do away with it. Anybody who wants a job, the government would provide them both job training and a job. So Mr. Conyers is a very progressive guy, and I met him, and through his staff, I met some, and through his staff, and going to various events, I met some other people, and he's come on my Pacifica show and on many times.
Yeah, he's a formidable figure, man, and I respect his work so much. And Bernie Sanders does get a lot of credit for the Medicare for All and his initiatives, particularly in the 2016 race. But you're right, Senator Conyers, that brother's been putting it down for a very long time with little or no fanfare from the media.
Yep. If you think about it, Bernie just introduced Medicare for All. Mr. Conyers been introducing that, I know, at least since 2008, 9, something like that. At least close to 10 years, he's been introducing a Medicare for All bill. It's HR 676, new and improved Medicare for All. Mr. Conyers has been, a very progressive guy, way ahead of a lot of people. So through him, I met a lot of people, and I'm very proud to have met Mr. Conyers.
Well, look, man, as long as you keep your ethics in check and you know what you're about, I say you go anywhere. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you're going to get infected with establishment politics if you talk to these people. No, that's your job to talk to people. That's what we do, right? So, have those conversations. As long as you stay true to who Garland Nixon is, I say go anywhere, even on the Republican platform if you have to, in order to have these conversations.
Right, because a lot of people know that I go on Fox News. And I go on Fox News and I say what I believe. The thing about it is, the fact of the matter is, to be honest with you, people talk about you're co-opted because you go here or you do a show in Sputnik, the Russians are co-opting you or whatever, right? The fact of the matter is this: if I wanted to be co-opted, I could already made a lot of money. I had some offers, but I would have had to veer away. You know what they want you to do? They want you to go to the center. It's okay to still fake left, but you got to go away with the mainstream. Here's the thing about me, and I'm sure it's the same with you, the same with Jimmy Dore. We are what we are. I couldn't say something I didn't believe if I wanted to. If somebody came to me and said, you know what, we'll give you $100 million, you just got to say a few other things, I couldn't do it. I don't even have the ability to do it. I am who I am, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's why people are now going to YouTube and Facebook and Periscope for news and for commentary, because they're sick and tired of turning on the mainstream media and hearing, Russia or, whatever the case may be, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, speaking of Russia, man, I'm sure you're aware of what happened with RT America having to file as a foreign agent. And this, to me, is just more of the same narrative in order to paint the Democratic Party as being, somehow victims of Russia. And it's like they just got to keep up the lie. It's like, it's like the spouse that doesn't come home, says he was at the friend's house. She meets the friend. Now the friend's got to lie. And everybody's got to keep the lie up. Oh, no, the car broke down. Where did it break down? It broke down on this side of the road. And Jimmy came to get me. And then, now you got to tell Jimmy. And then Jimmy's got to make up a story and tell his wife, because all of it gets tangled. So that's the way I see it, man. I don't see any validity to it. I know when I went on RT America, no one told me what to say. way. There was no scripting. There was nothing. You just showed up. They said, we're going to talk about this today and speak what's on your mind. What's been your experience with Sputnik or RT?
So I do a show on Sputnik. Here's the funny thing about it. And I do a show on Sputnik. I've been doing a radio show on Sputnik since April. I've been doing a radio show on Pacifica since 2006, right? It doesn't matter what platform I'm on. I've never said anything different than I say, right? So now what people do is when I say the same thing that I've been saying all along, oh, you're just saying that because you're on Sputnik. They won't address what I'm saying. They're looking for a way out by saying, well, you're saying that for this reason, you're saying that for that reason. What we see now is this. It's a very dangerous time because I think a wounded bear is the most dangerous animal. Right now, the institutions, the political institutions, the media institutions, they're wounded. People don't trust them anymore. People are starting to see through them. People are starting to understand that they lie. And they realize with the people that told us that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide, that a lot of people will now realize you people are full of crap. And so now what they're doing, they're bringing Google in, they're bringing Twitter in, they're bringing Facebook in before Congress. And they're saying, you got to do something to stop these people and that are working for the Russians. And who's working for the Russians? If you're talking about issues of race, remember, it started collusion. They're working with Trump. Well, that completely fell apart because it's absurd. Like the Russians, like any foreign spy agency is going to actually call to the country they're spying on and ask for permission. That's pretty ridiculous. But that fell apart. So now it's gone to even more absurd. They want to be divisive and create chaos. And how do they want to do that? They want us to talk about race and LGBT issues and guns. But meanwhile, if you turn on CNN, MSNBC, they're talking about race and LGBT issues and guns. But the Russians want us to talk about that stuff because it's going to divide us. It's ridiculous. But you know what it allows them to do now? It allows them to start going after people like me and you. Yeah. It allows them to start going on after people and use it. These are fake news. This is propaganda. I predict that as you get closer to 2020, we're starting to see them now cut out off people's Twitter feeds and stuff like that. That they're going to be looking at anybody they can who is outside of the narrative. I think in 2008, they planned on Hillary getting it. They didn't see Barack Obama coming out of the blue. They ended up co-opting him, but they didn't see him coming. They had a plan to put her in, and it didn't work. So in 2016, they were like, you know what? We got to fix the primary to make sure that doesn't happen again. We got to get Hillary in. And so they fixed the primary, and that didn't work. Hillary was so bad. There's nothing you could fix to get Hillary to win. So I think going into 2020, they're going to keep broadening it out. They're going to say, well, we got to make sure there's no dissension on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. They're going broader and broader to cut dissension. That's what we're looking at now, where it is the excuses that they're making about fake news and the rest of this crap is to cut dissension.
Absolutely right, man. I agree with you. It's just the preponderance of the bullshit is massive. And like I was talking to Mike Figueredo yesterday at the Humanist Report, and we had this conversation. It's like, all we can do is stay true to who we are, like try to speak truth to power. That's all you can do. And we were looking at this story of WikiLeaks. Now, this just happened a couple days ago. They said Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, because it's kind of synonymous, but it is a separate entity. He's a person, and then there's the organization. But right. be that neither here nor there, they produced evidence that Donald J. Trump Jr. was corresponding with WikiLeaks. And it really looked bad. It looked horrible, Garland, if you just looked at it from the right. Atlantic article. But once I started digging in, and I also compared notes with Caitlin Johnstone, who's a writer on Medium, I noticed that they had altered, the Atlantic article did not print the full tweets. The full DM messages. They put ellipsis and periods where a conversation was going. So the message, I guess the message behind the message, the actual context of the messages are different when you look at the entire DM. So I'm like, oh my God, Garland, they're really trying to destroy WikiLeaks. Now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I've always seen WikiLeaks as an entity off to itself. When it was reported on Bush, I didn't hear any complaints from Democrats.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then when they started reporting on the Democratic Party, now we get complaints. Now, of course, the Republicans are clapping, but now the Democrats are saying they're Russian. Do you have an opinion on any of that?
Let's start with this, with WikiLeaks. They've got 100% record of truth. WikiLeaks, nothing that they've ever released has been proven to be false, for starters. And that's the problem. The problem is that they are a threat to the establishment worldwide. They've released stuff on everybody. So now, so what do they have? Even if what they said was true, if Donald Trump Jr. or whoever was direct messaging with WikiLeaks, what does that prove? Does it prove anything? I can direct message with WikiLeaks. What they were arguing, I don't even know if they're even arguing this anymore. It's gone so, it's just gone so over the top. They were arguing that Donald Trump's campaign was working with the Russians, right?
Right.
But as of yet, there's been no evidence tying WikiLeaks to the Russians. Nothing, zero. In fact, WikiLeaks just released a bunch of stuff on the Russians that they didn't want released. So there's been nothing to prove, for starters, zero evidence to prove that the DNC, first of all, that the DNC servers were hacked. They can't even prove whether or not they were hacked or whether it was an inside job. But they say it was hacked, and they say the Russians hacked it, and they say the Russians hacked it and worked with WikiLeaks. None of those things have they proven, have they given us one shred of evidence to prove. Zero.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
What they keep working off is nothing. They keep building stuff. They're like, well, you know, we think Tim Black was working with Garland. No ties whatsoever. But what they're really slick in the way they do it, because they start off with an allegation. Well, we believe with high confidence that this guy was working with that guy. And then the next paragraph they'll say, now, since this guy was working with that guy, this. Well, wait a minute. The first paragraph said it was an allegation. The second paragraph, you start treating that allegation as though it's fact. And that's what they've done with this entire Russian thing. They will make an allegation. They will say, if you read, that they had a defense intelligence report, all of this stuff, about the RT and all this other stuff is out of this intelligence report from January or December, right? And they said RT is working to interfere with the elections. And here was their evidence. They aired a third-party debate with the Libertarian candidate and the Green Party candidate. They covered Wall Street. They covered Occupy. And they aired a 1-hour documentary that was against fracking. That's the evidence. I would tell anybody, read that defense intelligence. That's the evidence.
Wow.
That's how RT interfered with the election and tried to destroy our everything by airing a 1-hour show on fracking, airing a third-party debate, and by covering Occupy. That's it. So, I mean, it's so absurd when you read it. But then they go on to say, now RT has to register as a foreign agent based on the Defense Intelligence Report. Well, let's read the Defense Intelligence. Well, wait a minute. Based on that, if that's the case, I think you and me are both foreign agents. I think Jimmy Dore, I think everybody, every progressive who's worth his salt is a foreign agent. Because I talked about Occupy.
Yeah.
I talked about, I got a picture with Jill Stein, me sitting side by side with her.
Right. Jill Stein's been on this show about 4 times, man. I interviewed her in person. I interviewed her twice in person, once, live stream just like this. And Ajamu Baraka, that's my guy. I mean, these are great people, man. But you're absolutely right, man. I think that it's this whole like Russian bots and, your propaganda peddlers, like this whole thing is a smear tactic, brother. I hate to see it work against us. There are good people on these networks, such as yourself, such as Lee. These are good people, man. I know that you guys are honorable. They're calling people like Chris Hedges, people like Larry King. He's on RT. Are you saying Larry King is a Russian puppet? So he was fine when he was on, what was he on, 60 Minutes? What was Larry?
Wasn't he?
Was it CNN? Oh, but now he's Russian puppet now.
And Schultz was on MSNBC, but they fired him because he wouldn't back off on the TPP.
Right.
So now he's a Russian. He's a Kremlin puppet now. Everybody's a Kremlin puppet. And there was a story the other day. This organization called the the Center for European Values, which I hate to say it, that sounds like a white supremacist organization.
Sure does.
I mean, but when I looked at who sponsored them, here's the thing about it. This is something I tell people. Click on the links. When you see these various organizations, right, it'll say, and a new report came out from some think tank. What I always do is I click on the think tank and I find their funders, right? I find who's on their board, right? So this Center for the European Values, I'm like, what in the heck, is this? And it was like linked to another, to this other think tank or whatever. So finally, I'm like, well, let's see who's on the board of this. Because they had an article, and the article said, if you go on RT, no matter what you're talking about, you're doing the work of Putin. It doesn't matter if you're going on there to talk about something that seems good and just going on there. You're tearing down democracy just for going on RT, right? Wow. So I'm saying, well, what kind of think tank came up with this? When I follow this, start clicking, and I find out who's on the board, Bill Kristol. Is on the board. The other guy was the former director of the CIA. He's on the board. The other guy, I think it was Mike Rogers, former head of the Senate Intelligence Committee. When you look on these so-called think tanks, the deep states on the think tanks. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, former CIA. Well, you ain't former. If you're the former head of the CIA, then you're still, as far as I'm concerned, you're part of the machine. Yeah. So we look and we see these so-called think tanks that are putting out these studies and information. And when you look at the think tanks, it's the same neocons just telling the lies every day on TV and trying to start the war. But we get an article. Well, and I'm like, I'm also suspicious of these articles. But I tell everybody, click on the links, find this think tank or organization behind it, and look for their funders, look for their board. You'll find the same usual suspects.
So that's the thing, Garland. Most people don't have the time that we allocate to do this type of investigation. They just hear a soundbite, and that's pretty much all they have. I mean, I understand they got other things going on, Garland. They got to take care of the kids. They got to keep the roof overhead. I get it. They're not into this stuff to this extent, but it is getting serious, man. Like, I don't know what's going to happen leading up to 2020. I think we're going to get more of this, as it gets closer to the new election. I tell people all the time, like, look, all I'm trying to do is make enough to stay indoors. I'm not worried about, like, the future. I'm sure that if I keep doing the right thing, opportunities will open up. How do you feel? How's the outlook look for you as a progressive journalist as you continue to do your work?
Same way. I think the one thing about the difference between people like you and I and these mainstream people is we're doing it because we're saying what we believe in. We're doing it because it's important. So to some extent, we're in the moment. You know what I mean? Right. So to some extent, we're not like, okay, what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We're doing what we're doing, and we're saying what we believe in, and we're really caught up in it, and we're enjoying it. And so I think if you're doing that, good things are going to work out for you. You know what I mean? And so that's where I am now. I'm doing that. I'm surviving. I'm making it. Like you said, I'm keeping the roof over my head and doing what I got to do. I think we need to be wary, though. We need to be aware because as we get closer to 2020, their thing is going to be, we tried to fix it in 2008 and we got steered away a little bit. Obama gave them a lot of what they wanted. Yeah, right? He did. He still got a lot of what they wanted. Okay, they didn't get 100%, but they probably got 70% of what they wanted. Then 2016, they had it made. Hillary was in. They fixed part of it. They didn't fix it all. I think in 2020, they're going to say, you know what? We're going to fix it all this time. We're going to from scratch, from the primary to the general election, that we're going to make sure nothing that we wanted on is not on line. They're going to be coming after people like us in various ways, just like they do it with RT and Farah. I think it's a setup. The sad thing is this. Normally, I would say, hey, you know what? I used to would feel like, okay, well, if the Democrats get in, we might be a little better off in some ways. Right now, with what's going with this Russia crap, I feel like if the Democrats get in, they're going to come after people like me and you harder than the Republicans. They see us. They see the one thing is dreadfully obvious, and that is the mainstream sees the left as their biggest threat. They would have rather had Trump than Bernie Sanders. You don't hear them saying, hey, we got to reach over and get the Tim Black, but we got to reach over and get the Jill Stein voters. They're like, how can we get the white Trump voters? Yeah. They don't care about the Jill. They're like, who cares, Jill Stein? She's a criminal puppet. How can we reach over and get the people who aren't going to vote for you anyway, who can't stand you? who ain't never voting for a Democrat. But they're still going after them. Why? Because ideologically, they're more aligned with them. They despise us. They can't stand us. You're
absolutely right, man. I feel the cold winds blowing whenever I'm dealing with any of these people, on Twitter. Neera Tanden and I had a run-in recently, and that's just because I got tired of her retweeting this guy, Tom Watson, who's always bashing, like, no matter what the issue was, Garland, they would bring Bernie Sanders into the equation.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't even matter. Like he's a senator in Vermont. Of course, he gets in front of the camera, but he's not controlling the Democratic Party. There are people following Bernie who listen to Bernie that appreciate and respect his line of thought. But that's not the reason why you're failing. You're failing because your team sucks right now. So. Right. What do you think about all the wins that were racked up? I saw SNL recently. I was just watching it before the show, Garland, and I saw they had a little skit on there about the Democrats winning the blue wave that occurred. And what are your thoughts about?
A couple of thoughts on that. No, my first immediate thing is, boy, is it amazing when Hillary Clinton ain't at the top of the ticket that some people actually show up, for starters. That's just how bad she was. In fact, we told them. We said, Trump is terrible. But you can't put Hillary on the ticket. You put Hillary on the ticket, she's so bad, they showed up for Trump and people stayed home. That's the first thing I thought. Yeah, it's a good thing Hillary ain't running for nothing right now. Nobody would show up and they'd lose again. But the other part of it is this. When you talk about local elections, they're totally different. Because the two big issues in America, I was going to say for progressives, but it's for the working class period. And that is what? That is the elitist Wall Street economics. Right, the embrace of an elitist Wall Street economic, way of doing things, agenda. And that neocon hawkish foreign policy. Those are the two big things more than anything else that ran progressives out of the Democratic Party. They're like, hey, you know what? I'm not down with the neocons and the Bush war cabinet, and I'm not down with Wall Street.
True. Very true.
And of course, those two together, the military-industrial complex is a part of both of them. So, but when you have a local election, Wall Street's really not that big a part of it, and you're not talking about making decisions of war and peace. So the controversy is not the same. You know what I mean? It's now you're talking about people who are saying what's going on in my state, in New Jersey. What's funny is New Jersey. So the guy was a former Goldman Sachs guy, right? But what he ran to the left. He ran way to the left. He said, you elect me, and within 100 days, I'll legalize marijuana. We'll do a $15 minimum wage. We got a lower college rate. He ran to the left and won by 14 points.
Well, Garland, you mean to tell me he adopted issues and standing points that Hillary Clinton was afraid to make her own? Is that what you're telling me?
In her backyard, and won in a blowout. And as soon as he won, when he was making his speeches, he went right to him. He won. He went to his speeches and he said, we're going to legalize marijuana. We're going to do 50. He went right back to him. He won as a progressive.
Wow. He
ran as a progressive. He ran for progressive policies. And the fact of the matter is the people even though he came from Wall Street, and that's what we've been saying. We've been saying, look, it ain't where you've been. It's where you are. Right. If you give me the policies that I want, I'm going to support you. That's what he did, and he won. Now, Virginia was about a couple of things. That was about Charlottesville. That was about Charlottesville.
Okay.
That turnout was about Charlottesville. A lot of people, because I'm right here. I had Andrew Miller, who was on the ground working there on my radio show, and just a lot of people there were very upset of what happened in Charlottesville, and they had a huge turnout. And the fact of the matter is, the Democrats could have ran an old paper cup. Didn't matter. People, I've often said in the Black community when I grew up, here's what I learned, over the course of time, and that's changing with the younger people, is Black folks generally even voted one or two ways, either for the Democrat or against the Republican when I came up. Well, now the younger people ain't buying that no more. But in Virginia, after Charlottesville, people were voting against the Republican. That was like people, Black folks, people of color, when they see some neo-Nazi guy walking around with, torches.
Yeah, that's a complete turnoff immediately. That's like vote repellent in the Black community. That's the last thing they're thinking about doing. They may be thinking about meeting you outside, but not to vote for you. You know what I mean? And you know what? You're absolutely right. I think there was a lot of racist like dog whistles this guy was using in this initially with Gillespie, right?
Oh yeah, he was terrible. Yeah, he was terrible. And he talked about embracing the South and all. Don't get me wrong, Northam was a a milquetoast establishment Democrat running. But all he had to do was get out of the way to win, really. He could have won by more. But the fact of the matter is, I think you look at, they had a Democratic Socialist win. Yeah. They had a guy who was a Democratic Socialist beat the majority whip in their house, in the House of Representatives, and there was and he got no help from the Democratic Party whatsoever, and won anyway. We've seen Democratic Socialists win around the country. I think the left is moving strong. I think we're doing good. I think the Democratic Party is making an error if they think that they can keep doing things the way they've been doing them, and then they're just going to win and stay in power. They'll get a couple wins every now and then. I'm not saying that, and I think I say, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I want the Republicans in power. I think what I've always said is I don't want them in power. And the problem is y'all lose to them all the time. That's why they're in power.
Yeah, it's strategy. It's like, okay, of course, the Democratic policies, by and large, not always, by and large, are better than Republican policies from my vantage point of the communities that I'm familiar with. Okay, but that doesn't mean I automatically will vote Democrat. No, it doesn't. I want to check out the Green Party. I'll even check out the Libertarian Party. I will begrudgingly check out a Republican, but once he starts talking that trickle-down economic crap, once he starts talking like all of our social issues are somehow germane to some genetic predisposition, as opposed to it being poverty, as opposed to it being unemployment, which they never want to have these conversations. They say, oh, there's just something wrong. You're inferior. They don't have family values. No, well, if dad's locked up over marijuana, he's doing a 10-year stretch for a little bit of weed, well, that kind of cripples the family structure, the family value, but they don't want to look at that side of it. So, yeah, I'm an independent. I didn't exit it, Garland, but I support local elections right now, I'm in Maryland, as you know. Ben Jealous. I'm pulling for Ben Jealous.
I'm supporting him.
You know what I mean? I interviewed him recently, Garland, and I'm behind his candidacy. People's like, oh, no, he's a Democrat, Tim. I'm like, dude, we got Larry Hogan.
Right. Not only that, here's the thing. We make an error as progressives if we get caught up in labels. We got to be about policy. So I don't care if you're running as a Whig. I need to know what your policies are.
Right.
If your policies are right, I'm gonna support you. So it makes as little sense to say I'm gonna support anybody as long as their name is a Democrat as it is to say I'm gonna support nobody as long as their name is a Democrat. It's the exact opposite side of the coin. It's an absolutist. You mean to tell me if a guy like Ben Jealous comes along who supports every policy that progressives believe in, which he does.
He does.
You're going to say, well, man, if this guy gets elected, he's going to give me every policy I believe in. Oh, but he's running as a Democrat, so I can't support him. Then you don't know anything about politics. Then you don't want policies you want to name. You want him to change the name. So what? Then if he changed and he ran as an independent, but he got rid of half of the policies you wanted, would you support him then? Say, well, he's running as an independent. That's great. But he decided now that he's against a $15 minimum wage. He's against marijuana legalization. He's for the military-industrial complex. But at least he's not using the word Democrat anymore. I don't care what you're running at. I'm not going by names and labels. I'm not getting dragged around by the ear. For all this time, people have been dragged around by the ear by the label of Democrat. I don't want to be dragged around by the ear of just the opposite because I ignore policy and get caught up in words.
I agree, man. And, I think part of it, Garland, is the bitterness that people feel towards the Democrats. There are a lot of young people that are involved in politics right now, the millennials, the upsurge on the left, and they're principled people. They feel like you should not benefit from cheating. You should not. I mean, I don't even know if that's a young person thing. It's just they're less cynical. They're like, oh, man, I can't believe they lied. I can't believe they tricked us. But see, the thing is this. These local races matter, folks. And people are going to be hurt when these bad candidates get in office. So you can't, I would love to be with you and say, hey, I get it. They deserve it. But there are people that don't deserve it who will suffer underneath that type of situation. We can't allow it to happen. Garland, speaking of SNL, look, I watched this. Like I said, I was watching just before the show, just because I wanted to see what was said. Do you know Leslie Jones played Donna Brazile on SNL last week?
Really?
Yeah, dude. Now, people have been on me because Garland, I told you. I said, Donna Brazile, now, look, I'm still crossing my fingers. She told me she was going to come on the show. I expect her to do so. I expect she's a woman of her word. We're going to line that up. But here's the thing. I don't care what you say. The Democrats left her out there being hated by millions and millions of leftists, right? They didn't know. I didn't see them coming out. Oh, Donna did this for the team, and we need to support her. And come on now, I didn't hear Tom Perez. I didn't hear anybody having her back. Okay, so now she makes this play. She writes her book. She gets her story out. Now, this week, SNL, they have her as one of the characters. You got the guy playing Trump, the guy playing Pence. You have somebody playing her now. That never would have happened. So for a person who was sort of outcast by the left and now has kind of come back, and don't get me wrong, I don't agree with everything in that book, and I don't agree with her walking back statements, Garland. But I got to think, I think she played it pretty well, bro. I think she played it pretty well, and I'm worried that when I interview her, she might come with some daggers because she's definitely savvy. If a week ago no one was talking about it, and all of a sudden now she's got a book out, it's a bestseller, and she's on SNL. Give it up.
Yeah, this is a very interesting situation with Donna Brazile because, as I say, I've told you I met Donna Brazile. I've been with her, I've been in her home before. I talked to her. I liked her as a person. She seemed like a very nice person. And anybody that meets her and sits down and talks to her will say, yeah, she's a very nice person. I was very angry at her. Look, the fact of the matter is she was part of a corrupt system. Let's be just honest. She was part of a corrupt system. She was getting paid in a corrupt system. She was willing to work within a corrupt system. Absolutely. At some point, for whatever reason, we'll never know what her motivation is. We can only guess. She decided to whistleblow because that's what she did. She blew the whistle. Nobody else, we all speculated, but nobody else inside that system other than the leaker, because I believe it was a leak. I don't believe it was a hack, than the leaker or the DNC leaker. But nobody came out, but even whoever that was did it anonymously. She's really the only person that came out and laid it on the table and said, here's some evidence of what happened. Now, what we saw the system turn on her and tear, like alligators, turn on her and try to tear her to pieces, call her every name in the book, attack her, etc. Right? And so it's a unique situation because as a progressive person who is very angry at the system and angry at her being part of a corrupt system, and then I see her being the only whistleblower, there's something to be said for that. You know what I mean? Hey, there's something to be said for a whistleblower. So it leaves you a little confused. You know what I mean? You want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but you're still a little bit mad at her or somewhat angry at her for being part of a corrupt system and saying, had things went the other way, had Hillary won, we know good and well you'd have ran along with that corrupt system and you'd have sucked up all the money and power that you was going to get.
Absolutely.
It didn't go that way, but she still could have rode it out because she knows now she's turned on that system. She knows she's toast as far as that system's concerned. She knows she's done.
That's a swan dance. That's what that is, man. I can't see unless she's going to go to Fox News and start anchoring over there. Did you see the dust up between Roland Martin and who was this on the left? Jake Tapper. See,
no.
I'm on Twitter, man. So, they were beefing because Jake Tapper called him out. He said, and what about you, Roland, giving Donna Brazile that question?
Whoa.
You need to answer to that. And this is a public forum, of course, so this got a lot of retweets, a lot of energy. And Roland basically said, mind your business. He never defended himself. He never really answered, Garland. Did you have any thoughts about Roland in this issue?
About it is, again, Roland was another one. So for all of that's the thing. And that's why Garland Nixon never made any money like that in the system. You know what I mean? That's why I never made that kind of money in the system, because I am who I am, and I'm not willing to play those kind of games. And when it came down to it, for all the big talk, Roland talks, and I've watched some of his stuff, and he does some pretty good stuff. But when it comes down to it, he's still part of that system, and he's still willing to work within the rules of that system. Right. So when it came down to it, he's like, hey, it'll be a feather in my cap. Let me pass this over to Hillary. Let me make sure I stay in the right circles, in the circles of the elite. And then when it all goes down, hey, I can call Donna and say, hey, Donna, remember what I did for you. I may get something out of it. If I'm still on the air, I may be able to get the president on my TV show. You know what I mean? So they're all looking at what they can get out of it. And Roland Martin was doing the same. And now that he's been outed, he's like, I ain't going to talk about it. So that's what I just see so many people. And that's what it comes down to, Tim. You know what I mean? A lot of times people, you get in a position where whether you're doing TV, whatever, and you have to make a decision and people see what they think is an opportunity to gain access. And the thing about it is this, that's what that influence peddling is about. It's about gaining access. And then people sell that access. Now that I got access, now that I got the president's phone number that I can call the president anytime I want, a lot of people want to talk to me. Hey, Garland, you can talk to the president. Yeah. Well, we'll give you a limo. We'll do this. We'll buy you this. Would you like to go to Spain? Blah, blah, blah. You hook me up with the president. I've had, like, for instance, I had a friend of mine a while back, very, very wealthy family, right? These people were rich billionaires, right? And I knew them. I had people, just because I knew them, I had people trying to go through me, offer me stuff just so I could go to their party, like their New Year's Eve party. I was invited. I had people trying to hook me up just to get to the New Year's Eve party so they could pitch whatever their wares were to this. And so I saw that. So imagine in my little world, I knew this person that was very wealthy because I know the person for a while. Imagine you knowing the president, you knowing somebody who's got the keys to the treasury, $1 trillion, $2-3 trillion treasury that they can hand out around the world. And you got the phone number of that person.
Wow.
To do anything. And that's the lure of the power inside the machine. And everybody wants it. But you know what, man? The thing about people like you and me and Jimmy Dore, we don't even want it.
No, man.
We don't even want it.
Dude, you know, look, like maybe it's with age. I just realized, look, man, frankly, it's too much work to lie. Like Garland, I do too many shows, dude. I do a show every day of the week. I did like 5 videos today. I'm doing the show now. That's not counting this one. And then tomorrow's the same thing. Tomorrow I'm gonna be kicking out content. Dude, I can't be lying, like remembering the lie I told or what I told this person I was gonna say. No, I can't do it. Like Look, I had a job, right? I used to work at HUD as a government contractor at HUD. I was working for Verizon. I worked for Pitney Bowes. I worked for, these different. I remember that. Like, this is not a job. This is what I do. This is a business to me. But I don't look at it like a job. Like, I have to report to someone. So, nah, man, I don't want to go back to being under anyone's thumb. Like, don't get me wrong. If someone's going to give me millions of dollars, I might take it, Garland. But then I would fund somebody else. I'd fund Garland. I'd help Garland have a real studio, because like Garland wanted to know, hey Tim, like I could come down to the studio and do the show with you, and I was like, Garland, this is my basement, bruh. I only got one chair in my basement. You know what I'm saying? Like if people, Donna asked the same thing. I can come out to the studio, Tim Black. I'm like, nah, I don't know if you want to come. I don't feel like I got the right accommodations for somebody who's used to going to NBC. But you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, I could see taking that money, putting it to use. But then I got to get out the game, Garland, because once you're sold, you're sold.
Once people give you that money, man, they want something in return. They're not giving it to you because they love you. It's something, somebody comes up with the big check, they want something in return. And,
hell, Garland, sometimes when people give me $5, they want something in return, man. People are crazy, man. Here's like $5, and they want something from a brother, it's crazy.
Yep. But the thing about, I think, the way we do things is this. It's the opposite. It is we do what we do, and people are willing to donate, or people are willing to say, this is what I like, this is what I want, and I'm willing to support it. And that's what we do. That's the difference. You know what I mean? We're not like being paid for some service by somebody that says, okay, I got a mouthpiece. It's, look, if you want Tim Black, you're going to support Tim Black if you like what he's saying. And I think that's, what's funny about it? When Bernie ran, $27 at a time. That's what happened. People said, okay, well, that guy right there is saying something that I like, and people gave money. What he showed is that a politician can get out there and can say, you know what? This is what I'm about. And people will say, I like what you're saying. To me, see, two people were very dangerous. The two people they hate are Trump and Bernie. And I'll tell you why. Trump, he is what he is. He's a racist, whatever. He's incompetent boob. But that being said, what Bernie did was, what we were told is the only way that a politician can get elected is to go to Wall Street and the military industrial complex and Pfizer and all these other, the healthcare and big pharma, and get money and spend this money on MSNBC or CNN or the New York Times for that kind of media, and then they can win. Everybody, and all of them get their money. The candidate gets it, and the media gets it, and they're all getting rich. And the consultants, and when you got to have consultants and focus groups and polls, this whole machine is getting greased, right? So they got us all convinced that the only way a politician get elected is that all the machines must get greased. Meanwhile, Bernie comes along and says, no, I ain't taking any of that, $27 at a time. And he would have won if he wasn't cheated. But let's not forget Trump. For all his terrible things about Trump, Trump won with no money. Trump just went up and said, basically, nah, I'm not part of this filthy machine. And they don't want to admit that he won. They don't want to admit that he beat him, but he did.
Yeah, he
so
did.
Trump, one of the reasons they hate Trump is not just because it's in fact, man, here's the other thing about Trump. Is Trump any really different than the Republican Party? One of the reasons they hate him is because he doesn't know how to say it in a way that's acceptable. The same racist crap that they've been saying, the same racist, crazy policies that they've been pushing, he's been pushing them. The same warmongering crap, he's pushing it. Maybe not as warmongering as some of them, I hate to admit.
True.
But he's not smooth enough to say it in a way that is inoffensive.
Right. That's why the KKK and the Nazis and the skinheads or whatever these people are, they're coming out of the woodwork because he's speaking directly. Like he's not using the whistles. He's like, yeah, MS-13, the Mexicans. I'm talking about the Mexicans. They're rapists. Like he said that, bro.
Yep. And to some extent, they see him as a threat because he came in with like 1/5 of the money of Hillary. So what again did he prove? He proved that you don't have to have that money to win. Bernie proved you don't have to have that money. So Trump is a threat to their system. They want to take Trump out because giving them what they want in a way, but they don't know what he's going to do. They can't control him. So he's not just under their whim. They can't control him. The things that they normally say and do that he's saying and doing, he doesn't know how to say it in a way that people can't see through it like they do. Like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan don't say the same racist crap, but they'll say it with a smile on their face.
Right. Howdy doody smile, Paul Ryan. You know what? You just Garland, you just gave me a pearl of wisdom, bro. One of the things that makes Trump so scary is he's uncontrollable. And I don't just mean the tweets. If you don't need the money, if someone controls you with money, you're under control. Like we know there's just so much you can do because you got to keep that money coming in. Yep. And those people giving that money expect a certain level of civility and calm from you. And at least on these issues, you have to be, lock, stock, and step with what we want. So when you have somebody like Trump who didn't need their money to run, he's not beholden to them to that extent. God, man, that's a scary thing for the establishment. And that's one of the reasons why they've really been after Trump. Everyone knows they wanted Jeb Bush. If they couldn't have Jeb Bush, they wanted Marco Rubio. They couldn't get Marco Rubio, they wanted Ted Cruz. The last person on the list next to, I don't even know who was worse. Ben Carson. They wanted Ben Carson before they wanted Trump. I mean, nobody wanted this guy to win on the right. I mean, the establishment right. So, wow. I think that you have just, pointed out something that I hadn't really considered. Oh, here's my other point. And you also brought this to me. We have people that donate because they like what we are saying. Yeah. Not giving us money to say a certain thing. Exactly. So it's different. Like if you give to Garland's show or you support Garland's efforts, it's because what he's already talking about, what he represents. And that was the power of Bernie Sanders. I looked at Bernie Sanders' track record. I looked at what he was saying on the Congress floor 30 years prior. Like that's what resonated with me because I was worried like, okay, this sounds great, but what was he doing 10 years ago? Oh God, same story. Same talking points, same ethics, same issues. 20 years ago, same story, same talking points, same issues. So that's why I gave to his campaign and why I support him because I believed that that's the person it wasn't like I was meeting a representative or, having a public face and a private face like Hillary Clinton, but more, this was authentic. This is what he believed.
Yeah, that was it. Bernie, finally people looked up and they saw somebody that I'll say this. It wasn't everything about Bernie was perfect. No, there were some things I didn't like, but you knew what you were going to get. You knew when he came in exactly what you were going to get because you were going to get what he's been saying. You were going to get what, you knew coming through this guy's straightforward. And that's why, the establishment on the left had to take him out because they're like, nah, this is not going to work. We can't have this guy in there. The problem they had with Bernie was they did know what they were going to get and they weren't willing to deal with it. The funny thing is I remember Lloyd Blankfein, who is the CEO of Goldman Sachs, said Bernie Sanders' campaign is dangerous. Well, actually, he never said that about Trump. He never said Trump's campaign. Well, you know why? Because one thing they did know about Trump, they knew Trump was a billionaire. They knew when he got in, he was going to bring in his Wall Street boys. They knew he's not that bright. Let's be honest. And that they could flim-flam him, and that he may aggravate him. But when it came down to it, look at the tax bill that they wrote.
Yeah.
They wrote another tax bill that 80% of it goes to the wealthy. Is that, Trump is he's going to drain the swamp. He's going to do all that. He ain't going to do nothing. They're going to get the same thing that they got. They got a $700 billion Pentagon budget. I brought this up. I got an email from Dutch Ruppersberger, who is a congressman in Maryland. And it said, we got to stop Trump. We got to resist Trump. He's a madman. Send some money. Click here to send $10 today, right?
Right.
Which I didn't. So they're talking about how we got to resist Trump. We got to stop Trump. He's a madman, right? Then a month later, Trump asked for a $54 billion increase in the defense budget. They gave him 80. He asked for 54 and they gave him 80. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. He's a madman. We can't trust him. We can't trust him with the military. He's got to get the nuclear codes. He's scary. How are we going to stop this man? By giving him more money than he asked for? What are you trying to? Are you going to drown him in a pile of money? So do you expect me to believe that you're trying to resist Trump? And it was only like Bernie. There was like Rand Paul, like 4 people in the Senate that voted against it. The rest, all of this resistance crap that they're feeding us, when it came time, the man asked for $54 billion. You're resisting him by giving him $26 billion more than he asked for the defense budget. And you're telling me I'm supposed to believe that you're afraid of what he's going to do with the military, that you're afraid that you can't control him with the military, yet you're giving him, it's like saying, I don't trust Tim Black with his sharp object. What are you going to do? I'm going to give him a Uzi.
Look, Trump's got a drinking problem. Hurry up, guys. Go get him a case of vodka. Right. What? No, that's not what you do. But that's exactly what they're doing, man. Senator Elizabeth Warren, I wanted to ask you, man, for a second there, Garland, man, I thought, okay, this is the Elizabeth Warren that I like. The one that looks in the camera and says, it was rigged. It was rigged, and I'm like, okay, she's back. And then a couple of days later, oh, I didn't mean rigged. I meant, like a rig that rides down the road, like a trailer rig. So I'm like, oh, God, here she is again. This is the same Elizabeth I didn't like, who didn't support Bernie because she didn't know how things were going to turn out. She wouldn't support Hillary, and they still lost. What are your thoughts about Senator Elizabeth Warren?
The funny thing about this is, remember when Tom Perez first started? And he said, the Bernie people are upset because they said it was rigged, and it was. And then a couple of days later, he comes back and says, some friends of mine have told me I need to clarify this. And it was fair and square. Hillary won. Hillary got more votes than Bernie. So it was fair and square. Well, First of all, the fact that she got more votes doesn't mean that it's fair and square. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole discussion, but just because a person has more votes, back in New York, back in the turn of the century in New York, one person would get more votes. The reason was because they'd send a gang of people over to this area to beat people up at the polls.
Right.
So I got more votes because I beat all your voters up at the polls. So the fact that she got more votes, let's face it, I can take up 120,000 votes in Brooklyn that Bernie didn't get because they threw him off the poll. So he came back. But my point being this, I don't want to get off track, is you notice how everybody that comes out and says something like it's rigged or it wasn't right or Bernie was done wrong, within a couple of days, they walk that back. Because the people with power and money, especially if you're in office, they come to you. And I've seen this kind of stuff before. I remember when Dennis Kucinich was reticent to vote for Obamacare. He was the last person. And basically what they did was, my understanding of what happened, because I was doing a lot of stuff on Capitol Hill, my understanding, I can't say anything 100%, but this is what I was told, that they basically went to the unions that were in his area and said to them, talk to him. And they said, look, if you want to get reelected next time, you better vote for this, or we're going to cut your money off. We're not going to knock on doors. You know what I'm saying? Oh. So if somebody's in office, if you're Elizabeth Warren and you say it was rigged, and they don't come to you. They go to the people in your district, the unions, the structures that support you to get you elected, and say, hey, y'all better come down on her. And they come to you and they say, Tim, if you don't walk back on that, you ain't getting reelected, because we're going to support somebody else. We're going to see primary, blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking, I don't want to lose my seat. And that's what happened. They always walk back because they threaten their seat.
Garland, see, Garland adds a perspective, man, that I'm not, I'll admit, man, I don't know this stuff, man. Of course, I'm thinking they get threats, but that's the type of threat I can see happening in D.C. The type of threat that's not even direct. It's like that passive-aggressive bullshit where they go get the guy who gives you money, and that guy calls you up like, hey, I'm going to cut off your money because I owe a favor to these people. So that makes so much sense, Garland.
Yep. It's, that subtle pressure where they go to the people, because, to get elected, right? If you're in a district, you got to build coalitions. You might have the NAACP. You might have the Postal Union or some particular workers union. You got these various groups, SEIU, various groups in there, and you got to get all of them behind you and get them to knock on doors for you and get them to help get money donated and all these things, right? And if somebody gets to all those groups and those groups call you from your district and say, well, we're unhappy with that, and you're going to run, and in 6 months you're going to call us to tell us to start knocking on doors, and we ain't going to be ready to do it. Then you got to make a decision. Am I going to keep my seat or not? And then that's when you have a whole corrupt system, because now you have politicians whose only job, you know what their priorities, 1 through 9, is to keep their seat. Everything else starts at 10. What's your first 10 priorities? Well, the first 9 to keep in my seat. Everything else we can start at 10.
Garland speaking that truth, spitting that truth, man. Look, I'm waiting, maybe I had to check my email. I'm probably got some people telling me to walk back a video, or they're going to cut off my Patreon supply. They're like, don't you talk like that about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Look, Garland, to kind of wrap it up, man, I'd like to get your opinion on Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I have went in on her. She is, to me, but see, I know a lot of people from Florida. I've had Tim Canova on this show. Stephanie Myers is running out in that district, near her district in Florida. God, I'm trying to think of all the people who've had Florida people. Jeff Miami Gator, Jeff Campbell, Peter Hager. I got a whole squad in Florida who told me about all the environmental concerns they have. They told me about she taking this prison lobbyist money. They told me about the loan shark scams she approved of. It's like all horrific, and that's not even counting the DNC. That's not even counting everything else the general public knows. I'm talking about things central to Florida. What's been your take? I think she needs to step down, get out the way, Congresswoman. What's your opinion about Debbie Wasserman?
I think she represents the worst, the farthest right-wing, most corrupt element in politics, not just the Democratic Party. In politics, she is so corrupt. And if you look at what happened, my understanding was that when Barack Obama named her as the head of the DNC, that he was told, you don't want to do this. She's terrible. She's horrible. And that if you read Donna Brazil's book, she talks about how bad she was. She kind of hints at it and says, well, she wasn't very good at doing this. She didn't tell us what was going on. She didn't. The reason is because Debbie Wasserman Schultz would never had anything to do with the DNC. In 2008, she was Hillary's campaign manager, coordinator, whatever you call it, right? 2011, when she became the chairman of the DNC, she was there to get Hillary elected in 2016. She was always a Hillary Clinton co-chair. She was just sitting in the DNC, and she is corrupt. She's right. Look, she opposed medical marijuana even for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. The woman, she opposed the Iran nuclear deal. She is just, to me, horrible. I do understand that she had a lot of fundraising ties or something, which tells you how terrible the Democratic Party is, that with fundraising ties can get you to the top. But she is everything that's wrong with politics. I think we err if we just say she's a bad Democrat. She's representative of the worst element in politics today. Sold out. And now what the Democrats are to some extent is they're sold out. They're sellouts with nothing left to sell, because they don't have the House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have the presidency. They've got few governorships. The only thing they got to sell is the future. They're like a guy that gets drafted in the first round that says, hey, they draft him because they say, hey, in a couple of years he'll be good. Right now, they're trying to play off of this, win the other in Virginia and Jersey and right. Say, see, we're going to do better, because they weren't getting any funds. They weren't getting, everybody giving up on them. And they're trying to say, hey, next year, 2018, 2020, we're going to do better, because they were dead in the water. But I'm not sure they will when it gets to a national election, and they have to start talking about foreign policy, and they have to start talking about Wall Street economic elite, Wall Street elite economics.
Garland, spot on, my brother, spot on. Look, Garland, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a great... Look, man, that was an hour, Garland. That's flew by,
that
brother.
So quick.
Ain't nothing, man. Garland, tell people where to go to find out more about you and to follow your work.
All right. So Twitter at Garland Nixon, Facebook Garland Nixon, Instagram Garland.Nixon. So it's all of it's pretty easy. My email is even garlandin@gmail.com. I do a show every Friday on Pacifica from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time in DC. It's WPFWFM.org. You can listen to it live, or it's WPFWFM.org or 89.3 FM. I do a show every day on Sputnik. And that's 105.5 FM from 7 to 10. I do a morning show with Lee Stranahan, who is a conservative. So we have a left-wing guy, a right-wing guy, and we debate. And sometimes we argue, but we have good, productive discussion. Tim comes on. And that's it. You can get in touch with me. As I said, garlandin@gmail.com. That's my email address. Also, you go to iTunes. You can look up the one show is called Fault Lines on Sputnik. The other one is called News Views on WPFW. So that's all how you find Garland Nixon.
Man, Garland, you're a hardworking guy, man. You got like 8 jobs here, man.
Well, look, you got to come on my Pacifica show, man. Let me know when you can come on a Fridays from 6 to 7, and we'll have a blast. If you can come in the studio, that's great. If not, just call in, and we'll do it that way.
Man, brother, I appreciate the invitation, man. Guys, go see Garland Nixon, Garland Nixon. For Instagram is Garland.Nixon. Find him, check him out there. Garland, you gonna get a YouTube channel going, brother?
Yes, I'm working on that right now. I'm supposed to meet with my my IT people this week. I'm trying to get it up within the next month and get going. That's the way to go.
Man, you don't need no damn IT people for that, Garland. Hope you're not paying them too much, man.
Oh, no. I don't have a lot to pay. You know, in this business, you ain't making enough money to pay. I'm not Rachel Maddow making $30,000 a show.
Well, look, man, if you need any advice or like, connectivity type stuff, man, hit me up, email me, man, or text me. You got my number, text me, bro.
Man, we'll get together and meet.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Once again, guys, Garland Nixon, go follow this brother everywhere. He is the truth. I'm so glad to have him here.
And I'm proud to be on your show. Thanks a lot, Tim.
You got it, brother. Hey, look, guys, sorry, my bad. I'll see you guys Thursday. Tomorrow I'll be working in the studio. I won't have a night show, but Thursday I'll see you where my guest will be TJ, the amazing atheist Kirk. And he's a burl of laughs, guys. Be here for that show. I'll see you guys on the next one, and we are gone.
All right.
All right, brother.
Tim Black.
And we are done.
Yes, sir. True. Funny. Tim Black. I am Tim Black.
Thank you guys for tuning in, man. I appreciate y'all. Go see leecamp.net, where I'll be in Richmond, Virginia in a couple of weeks, December 2nd. Then we're going to be in Portland, Oregon in January. And in February, we'll be in Salt Lake City, Utah. Peace.